Let's kick this off with a simple idea, but one that is seriously powerful. What if I told you that most of what we do isn't really driven by what happens before we act, but by what happens right after? I know, it kind of flips how we normally think about things, but it's the absolute key to understanding why we do what we do.
I mean, just think about it for a second. Why do you find yourself checking your phone 100 times a day, but you probably only touched a hot stove once in your life, right? Why does one habit become completely automatic while you just can't seem to make another one stick? It's a huge question, and the answer is all about the power of consequences.
And to really get that answer, we have to talk about the psychologist B.F. Skinner. He came along with this totally revolutionary way of looking at behavior. He said, let's stop focusing so much on what's going on inside someone's head and start looking at what's happening in their environment. And wow, was that a game changer.
So, to see what made Skinner's idea so radical, you have to know what came before him. See, other behaviorists, like Watson, they only focused on stuff they could literally see and measure. They were like, sure, the mind exists, but it's a black box, so we're not going to touch it. But Skinner, he came along and said, hold on a minute. Thinking, feeling, those are things we do too. They're just private behaviors. And just like that, everything was on the table.
And this brings us right to his core concept, operant behavior. It's really just a fancy term for any action that operates on the world to get a result. And here's the bottom line. We keep doing things for one simple reason, because they work. If an action gets us something we want, we are way more likely to do it again. It's really that straightforward.
So, how does this actually play out in real life? Well, Skinner broke it down into this beautifully simple formula. It's like the engine that drives all of our habits and actions. He called it the three-term contingency, or just SRC. And I'm telling you, once you learn this pattern, you are going to start seeing it absolutely everywhere. Okay, let's break it down. S is the situation, the context, the trigger. R is your response, the actual thing you do. And C is the consequence, the result that follows your action. But here's the secret sauce. It's the C, the consequence, that has all the power. It actually reaches back in time to control whether you'll do that R again the next time you're in that S. All right, theory's great, but let's make this concrete. Here's an example that pretty much all of us live through every single day. Yep, send in a text message. So, the situation, S, is you get that feeling, hey, I want to connect with my friend. The response, R, is you whip out your phone and send a message. Then comes the consequence, C. They reply right away, maybe with a great GIF. That positive consequence, getting that little hit of social attention, reinforces the behavior of texting. So of course you're going to do it again. It worked.
Okay, now for another classic example. This one shows how this whole process can shape behavior, even when we don't mean for it to happen.
The kid's tantrum. So picture this. The situation S is that the grown-ups are talking to each other and the child isn't the center of attention. The child's response, R, is to start screaming. Now what happens next? The consequence, C, is that every adult in the room immediately stops what they're doing and looks at the child. Boom. The screaming worked to get the desired result, and just like that, screaming is reinforced and gets added to that child's toolkit for the future.
And of course, we can't talk about this without going back to the original lab experiment that basically put this whole principle on the map. The famous Skinner box. It's a very precise setup. The situation, S, is you have a thirsty rat inside a box. It's just moving around, and by total chance, its response, R, is that it bumps into a little bar. Instantly, the consequence, C, is that a drop of water comes out. Well, you can guess what happens next. The rat very quickly learns that in this situation, pressing that bar gets it water. The behavior was selected and locked in by its consequence. Okay, so consequences shape behavior. We got it. But that leads to an even more fascinating question. Why are some habits, like, say, checking your social media feed or playing a slot machine, so incredibly hard to stop? The secret isn't in the reward itself, but in the pattern of the reward. So there are two basic patterns here. On one hand, you have continuous reinforcement. Think of it like a vending machine. You put $1 in, you get a snack. Every single time. It's great for learning something fast, but the habit is also kind of weak. But then you have intermittent reinforcement. This is the slot machine. The reward only comes sometimes. You learn it slower, but man, the resulting habit is unbelievably strong. And this chart shows you everything. Resistance to extinction is just a scientific way of saying, how stubborn is this habit? How long will you keep doing it even after the rewards stop? And look at that difference. Behaviors that were rewarded every time fade out super fast.
But behaviors that were rewarded unpredictably, they are incredibly persistent. That's why you keep pulling the lever. You keep refreshing your feed because you just never know if the next time is going to be the one that pays off.
So, all of this, it all builds to this one central, profound idea that was at the heart of Skinner's entire life's work. Here's the ultimate takeaway. If our behavior is shaped by what comes after it, then we have an incredibly powerful tool for change. This isn't just some dusty old theory. This is the bedrock of so much modern therapy, education, and even just personal habit change. If you want to change a behavior, you don't just grit your teeth and rely on willpower. You change the outcome. You engineer the consequence. When you really think about it, what this all means is that our actions aren't random at all. It's like natural selection, but for our own habits. Our personal history of consequences is constantly selecting, shaping, and maintaining the behaviors that work for us in our environment. And so I want to leave you with this question to think about. Now that you know the SRC pattern, start looking for it. Be a detective in your own life. What are the small, maybe even invisible consequences that are keeping your daily habits, both the good and the bad, in place? Because understanding them, well, that's the first real step to understanding yourself.